It's unclear which tariffs will last. Trump has since altered, paused, or canceled some of the tariffs. But the threat of the tariffs has prompted a strong response from Canadian leadership.
Canada has discreetly carried out what experts are referring to as a European trade offensive that threatens to overthrow decades of American economic dominance, while the United States is still embroiled in international trade conflicts. The figures are astounding. Since 2017, commerce between Canada and the EU has increased by 66%, resulting in a $119 billion partnership that is growing quickly.
Canada announced retaliatory tariffs, including a 25% tariff on $30 billion worth of U.S. goods on March 4th, with an additional 25% tariff on over $20 billion in U.S. imports that took effect on Thursday, March 13th.
The way that this change in commerce is rearranging the balance of power inside NATO is genuinely unprecedented. European countries are gradually shifting their supply chains away from U.S. companies and toward Canadian ones as a result of growing apprehension about the unpredictable nature of American commerce. The deliberate strategy underlying Canada's actions and the implications for U.S. economic clout globally are explained in this video. Canada has quietly crafted a smart European trade strategy that is starting to change the economic picture across the Atlantic, as Washington struggles with several trade disputes on several fronts. Since its implementation in 2017, the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement (CETA), the cornerstone of this plan, has given Canada unparalleled access to European markets. This pact was more than just a typical trade agreement. It was Canada's strategic first step toward a longer-term goal of becoming Europe's preferred trading partner in North America. Businesses in Europe have started to systematically diversify their supply chains as a result of the unpredictable nature of U.S. trade policies in recent years.
Our tariffs will remain in place until the U.S. tariffs are withdrawn, and not a moment sooner.
These tariffs went into effect at midnight on Tuesday, March 4th, sending U.S. markets into a dramatic sell-off. Steel and aluminum imports will also be subject to a levy.
Canadian trade officials have positioned their country as providing three key advantages that American suppliers are currently unable to match: competitive pricing structures that hold up over time, a significant reduction in regulatory trade restrictions, and, perhaps most importantly, a relationship free from the political weaponization that has typified recent U.S. trade policy. This shift is not occurring by accident. There has never been a better moment for Canada to launch its European trade offensive. Canada positioned itself as a dependable substitute at the same time that Washington imposed significant tariffs on European imports, including a 25% rise on EU cars. European firms who are looking for stability in their supply networks have found resonance in this striking difference in strategy, in stark contrast to what many European companies view as increasingly capricious U.S. trade choices. Canadian authorities have been especially successful in emphasizing their nation's dedication to rules-based trade. Canada's strategic approach now revolves around energy security. Canadian natural gas and renewable energy technology have garnered a lot of attention as European countries aggressively look to diversify their energy supplies in the face of unstable global markets. A modest but significant change in focus has occurred as European energy ministers have increasingly traveled to Ottawa rather than Washington to explore long-term energy relations. Canada has effectively established itself as a competitive supplier in the industrial, aerospace, and technology sectors outside of the energy industry. While Canadian technology businesses have developed European operations at an unprecedented rate, Canadian aerospace manufacturers have gained contracts that were previously held by American firms. The outcomes are very clear. Under CETA, commerce between Canada and the EU has increased by around 2/3 to $119 billion a year, with significant potential for expansion. Canada's economic advances have left Washington with fewer and fewer countermoves, causing a fundamental shift in the strategic trade chessboard. The U.S. today faces a conundrum. The identical economic leverage strategies that guaranteed U.S. trade dominance for decades might be the ones undermining it. Washington's recent move to quadruple tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum to 50% shows that it is prepared to exert considerable economic pressure on its northern neighbor, but this assertive stance might be having unintended consequences for American trade strategists. The United States has served as NATO's economic hub for many years, using its status status as the alliance's main supplier to maintain power and demand geopolitical concessions. For a long time, this economic dominance was regarded as an unchangeable aspect of transatlantic ties. However, American leaders are faced with a strategic conundrum that lacks a clear way out as Canadian trade policies gain traction throughout Europe. In contrast to their recent inclination for tariffs and limitations, they can either try to encourage European companies to keep their supply chains in the United States, or they can put direct pressure on Canada to limit its European aspirations. So far, the Biden administration's decision seems to prefer the pressure strategy. This approach, which goes beyond raising metal tariffs, shows Washington's commitment to upholding its established economic hierarchy inside the alliance. But Canada has reacted just as resolutely. Instead of giving in to American pressure, Ontario's decision to suspend a 25% tax on energy exports to the US shows that Canada is prepared for a protracted economic conflict. Canada's diversification plan is further validated by the self-reinforcing cycle created by this rising conflict. Every punitive American action strengthens Canada's case to its European allies for the need to lessen reliance on unreliable American supply chains. It is becoming more widely accepted among trade specialists that US policymakers have largely misjudged Canada's resolve to become a significant trading partner instead of remaining a submissive one. Businesses in Europe are paying careful attention to this trend. They understand that supply chain diversification without total detachment from American markets is a strategic compromise provided by Canadian collaborations. This well-rounded approach to risk management lessens susceptibility to Washington's economic pressure strategies while preserving the essential access to American markets for European businesses. It is becoming more and more clear that American politicians must decide whether to continue putting pressure on Canada or provide more alluring incentives to keep European companies doing business with American suppliers. There is a significant chance that any strategy will hasten rather than stop the current trade realignment, especially if harsh measures further enrage European partners and push them toward Canadian options. The historical background provides important context for the current situation between the United States, NATO partners, and Canada. Similar changes in economic power had place in the years following World War II as European countries deliberately lessened their reliance on American economic hegemony. These changes weren't just short-term tweaks, they were significant realignments that changed transatlantic economic connections forever. Rather than a temporary response to existing policies, what we're witnessing now is a structural change in NATO's economic architecture. The durability of recently negotiated trade deals, the readiness of European companies to permanently reorganize supply chains, and Washington's final reaction to Canada's growing power will all be important factors in determining how long this change can last. This realignment reflects a new geopolitical reality where diversification of trade ties has become crucial for national security, going beyond traditional economic competition. Instead of trying to maintain an antiquated hierarchical relationship that no longer represents economic realities, the upcoming months will show if Washington can adjust to this new paradigm by acknowledging Canada as a viable economic competitor deserving of strategic accommodation.